Welcome to the sound of the start of the new Sky Bet EFL season and the Not the Top 20 podcast betting show brought to you by Sky Bet. Now, from now until the end of the season, me, Ali Maxwell, him, George Elek, will meet each week to try and find value and win bets across all three divisions.
On the betting show, we'll be using Sky Bet prices and markets and offers. And this week and next week, we'll be mainly focusing on outright markets and season-long bets. But we'll also be making a few selections ahead of the first weekend of the season that starts on Friday for League One and League Two. And then from Thursday, the 14th of August onwards, the betting show will be the show that you guys know and hopefully love. Coming to you every single Thursday afternoon, the sound of the start of your weekend.
And for those of you new to the show, George and I are old friends and we like to bet on the EFL. We like to talk to each other about the bets that we're having and show each other our reasoning as well. And that's what this show is and will be all season. Betting is for over 18s only and can come with risks. Head to gambleaware.org to learn about those risks. We understand the risks that come with gambling. Crucially, we never bet more than we can afford to lose. We never chase our losses. We're sensible. We're disciplined with our staking. These are really important aspects of responsible gambling and important aspects of the NTT20 betting show. So straight into outright picks for League One and League Two, straight into the title winner market. And George, we are our own people. We have our own minds. We have our own opinions. And quite often at this part of the show, we'll put up competing selections. But both of us have landed upon a team in each league here that we think is tremendous each way value.
Yeah, and crucially with Sky Bet, because Sky Bet are the only firm paying 4 places. So rather than a quarter of the 3, you're getting a fifth of 4 when you back a team each way in the EFL this season. And for outright betting, that's massive because that 4th place could be huge. And, you know, we've done our 1-24s. Some people, I won't give any spoilers in case people haven't watched them yet, but people might think we'd just put our first place selections up for this. But obviously, price plays a big part in this. And even though Luton are the 7-2 favourites, which is top price in the market at time of recording, you know, in terms of the best bet, you're looking for the best value. And I am so surprised that Stockport are a double-figure price to win the league at 11-1. They're 11-1 now. You know, that's at time of recording. Prices are subject to change, and that might change in the time that it takes between us recording this and this going out. But at the current moment, they are 11-1, which is best price anywhere. A fifth of 4 with Sky Bet. Last season, they finished 3rd. It was their first season back in League One, having promotion out of League Two. There cannot be many more progressive football teams in the country. Like Wrexham are clearly one, and they managed to win promotion out of League One last season. But Stockport's march up the table might be a bit slower than Wrexham's, but it's still a very obvious upward trend. And if they were to win promotion this season coming, it would follow in the same pattern as their promotion out of League Two, where they were arguably one of the best teams in the league, or certainly one of the best teams, maybe the best team in the league. And they were beaten in the playoffs in the final that time. Last season, they were one of the best teams in the league. They ended up finishing 3rd behind Wrexham, got in the playoffs and didn't quite get over the line. Dave Challoner, their manager, has an incredible record. Like he's, you know, even though like success for him is so consistent, the bad seasons are normally when they still get into the playoffs and don't get through. There is an element with him where I find it impossible to believe that they won't be the very, very worst, a top 6 team this season, which obviously gives them a massive chance of winning promotion itself. They were the data darlings last season. Like their XG ratio was only just behind Birmingham for the most part of the season. You know, those who believe in XG would have had them as probably the second best team in the league over the campaign.
Just quickly, the reason why I like using those numbers for Stockport in particular, any team that has posted sensational numbers, maybe underperformed them, that's fine, but has the same manager, broadly the same style of play, a little bit of change here and there in the squad, which you can focus on a lot or a little. For me, it doesn't matter so much. Like it means that heading into the season, I can be really confident in a certain level of performance because it's unbelievably rare that in those circumstances, a team would suddenly tail off.
There's
completely.
No reason for it to happen. I mean, the thing, what's interesting about this is that we, post 1-24s, we get a lot of feedback from fans. And most of it is normally fans who we've said their team are going to do badly, telling us why we're wrong. Stockport are one of the only ones we've had quite a few Stockport fans say that's way too optimistic. And there have been various reasons for that. And a lot of neutrals, in fairness, as well. I don't really get how a neutral could look at Stockport last season and see it as a one-off. I think there's like a perception that this is Stockport County. They're not a big club, and therefore, you know, the likes of Argyle and Cardiff are going to walk all over them, which I don't really subscribe to that at all. I think often well-run, ambitious small clubs are often overlooked in the market, and we'll get onto one of those in a second in League Two.
Well, 9th highest average attendance in League One last season, hardly a minnow when it comes to fan base, and then also an owner with very deep pockets.
And willing to spend it, but it's perception, isn't it, rather than necessarily reality. Some of the feedback has been, well, they've lost key players. And yeah, they've lost Olafe, they've lost Will Collar. They obviously lost Barry back in January, but that didn't really seem to make much of an impact in terms of their success. And I kind of get it, but their recruitment has been really, really strong. I think Motherson off the left will be very good. I know that Eden's come in and got injured immediately. But the quality and the continuity throughout their side, like good teams lose good players. Like that's generally what happens. But they're still a squad absolutely stacked with quality. I know that there have been some question marks over the signing of Corey O'Keefe, who's come in for Carl Noyle, but my suggestion there would be that normally if Stockport are signing a player, they've probably got something about them, and I think it'll probably age quite well. And the other thing we're hearing about is the injury crisis at the moment, where certain key players, Hoskinen, their new centre backs out for 2 or 3 months, Eden's on crutches and other bits, but teams get injuries, and realistically, like even if they're struggling for the first couple of weeks of the season, over the course of the campaign, it's going to probably have minimal impact. The likes of Ethan Pye and Lewis Bate remain at the club, which is massive. I don't think they'll struggle for goals. There's rumours that Nathan Lowe could be joining the club as well, which in terms of plugging a goal-scoring gap would obviously be massive given what he did at League Two last season. They're just an incredibly well-run club, marching forward season on season with a manager who we can rely on. And I just don't think there's any way they should be a double-figure price. And the 11-1 getting 4 places here. So a repeat of last season would have them, it would obviously pay from an each-way perspective. And I think there is, with Luton, I think Luton will go well. I think there are real doubts about both Cardiff and Plymouth Argyle as to whether or not they'll be challenging the very top end this season, which really opens this market up from an each-way perspective. And even Huddersfield, who are second favourites, yes, the recruitment is really eye-catching. But, and I personally think they'll go well, but from a betting perspective, there are so many unknowns. Yeah. This is a club that finished last season terribly with a rookie manager. Like it doesn't take mental gymnastics to think that Huddersfield might flop this season. Whereas, Stockport to me are clearly the most solid option and a massive price to do so. And
then in League Two, I mean, it is in its nature a more unpredictable league that presents, if you're someone who likes longer prices, pre-season, League Two is normally where you'd find things that excite you the most on that front. That's absolutely the case with Barnet, who, even aside from betting, are one of the teams we're most excited about to watch this season, having come up from the National League, and also seemingly, in our eyes, being underrated massively by pretty much everyone else. Yeah. There are 8 teams priced up as being more likely to win League Two this season. We had them third in our 1-24, so 18-1 was always going to appeal.
Yes, there's a spoiler for those who haven't watched it yet, but fine. 18-1, again, 4 places, a fifth of 4. We have a betting Substack called TLS, The Long Shot, and our esteemed friend and colleague Nick Goff put up Barnet last night, which has meant that price has kind of gone in places. But the fact that Goffy's putting them up as well only makes me more bullish because he knows what he's talking about. Barnet finished last season on 102 points in the National League, and there is, even though they haven't won the league, there is a very clear precedent for good National League teams coming up being good League Two teams. Like Salford challenged the top end immediately, Stockport challenged the top end immediately, Wrexham went up straight away. And for some reason, I guess because like there's been the money that Stockport had in the National League, the money that Salford had in the National League, the money that Wrexham had in the National League was known. So they came up initially seen as kind of being big fish. Whereas for whatever reason, that isn't the case with Barnet. Like I understand if the investment isn't there, but they are still quite clearly a top-notch National League side who are dominant in their leagues, who the underlying numbers were tremendous, who've retained most of their key players, who've added some quality coming into League Two, and for some reason they're being seen as being like a possible playoff challenger. Like there's no reason at all why, if they don't maintain their performance level from last season, why they shouldn't be challenging at the top end. And they are, I think they've just been missed in the market basically. And the 18-1 at the time of recording is still about. And that, if you put those two together, you're getting 227-1 about the each way double, which with 4 places both, if we can land 2 places would be a fair return.
Yeah. Does anyone else stand out across either that market or other markets, the promotion market, for example, top 6 League One, top 7 League Two, of course? What else stands out for you?
Wycombe are interesting at 9-4 in League One. That's because
top 6.
Yeah, top 6. Mm-hmm. Just because with Sky Bet, just because they are the one side where, and again, like I think there is some negativity around Wycombe because of the way they ended last season under Mike Dodds. But they're actually a team that finished in the top 6 last season, who haven't lost Richard Kone, their most important player, whose underlying numbers at the back end of last season were really strong. They're kind of being factored in to regress, despite the fact they've got a seriously wealthy owner who's spending money again.
Dodds has had some really interesting quotes this summer. I think he obviously understands that the perception of him in this role has been quite negative because of where they were when he joined and the way that the season petered out and their very limp displays in those playoff semi-finals, admittedly against a Charlton side that are just very difficult to play against. But he has been very clear this summer, and some of this might be kind of PR management of like, I came in and I said to the owners during the interview process, I'm not going to change very much initially because you've obviously got a good thing here. But my way of playing and my stamp on this team will be different. And when it comes to the summer, whatever league we're in, I will start putting my imprint on things. So yes, maybe buying himself a bit of time and trying to get a bit more understanding from a fan base that, you know, are not feeling that positive heading into the season about the man in the dugout. But, you know, this guy is considered within the game very, very smart. He wouldn't have held the roles that he did at Sunderland, at Birmingham, and he wouldn't have got this job if he didn't have something about him. And even if his stock is low, the reality might be different. And if Dodds is a good manager, as you're suggesting, that 9-4 must be quite appealing, given they literally landed that last season. Yeah,
exactly. And, you know, even if his way of playing is different, back in the last season, even when the fans weren't happy with the playing style, especially defensively, they barely conceded anything. Yes, they've lost Caleb Taylor and Joe Lowe, which is important, but they've mitigated that with some impressive signings. And yeah, just like 9-4, bigger than 2-1 about them doing it again, just seems, again, like it seems removed where there's maybe an idea that they kind of flew too close to the side and now they're regressing back for where they should be. But when you look at the money that's being spent and the ambition of Wycombe Wanderers, there's no way that's the case.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Stevenage, top 6, 7-1, bit of a long shot. In fact, per the Sky Bet League One top 6 market at the moment, only 5 teams priced up as being less likely than Stevenage. So that's where I think the value is, because the way I see Stevenage is absolutely not, you know, a sort of 18th, 19th place team in League One. You know, they finished in 14th last season, but with very solid mid-table numbers, and particularly all through the season, their defensive numbers, their defensive record was really, really strong. And it's not the sort of thing that catches the eye of neutrals. And therefore, I think it might have led to them being a little underrated. But being a top 6 defence is a very, very good way of making sure that you're going to be at least mid-table. And frankly, with a small improvement going forward, should be challenging for top 10 at the very least, and I think could sneak in at a long price. I like the attacking additions as well. You know, Phoenix Patterson, Bez Labala, Jem Campbell, added to Dan Kemp and Jake Young and Jordan Roberts and Jamie Reed. Like, it's not a huge stretch to think that group of players could be part of a good League One attack. The question mark is whether Alex Ravel is good enough at coaching attacking patterns to get them to perform like that as a unit while maintaining the defensive solidity. So, yeah, I mean, clearly a long shot at 7-1, but in the top 6 market in League One, it's a dark horse pick for me, and it's Stevenage at 7-1. I think they'll go better than that suggests. What about in League Two?
Yeah, looking at the top 3 market, and Bristol Rovers joint top price in the market with Sky Bet 4-1, finishing the top 3, which I think is big. It's a really interesting market, this generally, because MK Dons are taking up a lot of it at even money. And even though, you know, there's been a huge gamble on MK over the course of the summer, rightly so, we obviously rated them in our 1-24s. But from a betting perspective now, like, you're still taking a side that finished 19th last season, who are going to have a lot of those players still in the side, and expect them to come out and be a completely different football team. It might happen, but I wouldn't want to find out at even money. And similarly, Chesterfield at 7-4, like, I rate them and really like them. But again, you're expecting a kind of relatively big step up from last season. Whereas with Bristol Rovers, they're a team that come down from League One, whose squad quality never should have had a relegation. I think it was a disastrous appointment of Calderon. They've gone in and brought Darryl Clark, who is solid in terms of his managerial capabilities and has taken teams, Bristol Rovers once, Port Vale once, out of this league in the past. Quality throughout the side that has been retained, like Camille Conte's still there. You've got Sotirio Nomachere as strikers. Like, they seem like the ones to me who maybe just shouldn't really be in this league and are kind of being forgotten because there's like negative perception of them after their relegation. And then a couple in the top 7 market. I'll talk about them a bit later, but I think Walsall are overpriced in the top 7 market at 13-8. But I'm not really willing to find out over the course of the season at 13-8, so I'm going to put them in a multi later on. But I do think that Fleetwood at 3-1 are overpriced again. Like a poor season last season, but Peter Wilde is again very, very solid of his managerial capabilities. Had Barrow knocking on the door of the top 7 for a long time. There's no denying that the budget that he's got at Fleetwood is much higher than that. They're a team that have quality throughout the side. They've gone out and they've tried to fix their goal scoring issues by bringing in James Norwood, by bringing in Ched Evans, by bringing in Will Davis, who scored a lot of goals at Sutton last season, and alongside that have some really good creative players, and I fancy them to be much, much better than what we've seen before. Again, another team who've projected on the data much better than their points tally. So yeah, Fleetwood at 3-1, top 7, Bristol Rovers 4-1, top 3.
Yeah, for me, in League Two, I'm so blinded by Barnet that basically every market I look at, I'm seeing them as the value pick.
Apart from relegation.
Top 7 at 9-4 particularly appeals for cross-divisional multis or ACCAs, for example. And frankly, the Chesterfield top 3 does as well, at 7-4 at the time of recording. It's not the sexiest price, but with the question marks that I have about MK, some that I have about Bristol Rovers as well, when I look at the top of the market, it's Chesterfield, to me, that personally I'm most confident about being in that top 3, just with their firepower at the top of the pitch, Paul Cook's record of promotion and of building teams at this level that just completely overpower teams with their goal scoring ability. Yes, some defensive concerns, but they finished top 7 last season, and I think that it's impossible for me to imagine them being any worse than that, and I think challenging for the top 3 for sure. When it comes to the relegation markets, League 1 and League 2 are obviously very different, because in League 1 you've got 4 relegation places up for grabs. In League 2 there's only 2. So how do you look at League 1, for example?
Well, interestingly, and if you haven't listened to the 124s and you're going to, then pause, go and listen to them and come back, because these are going to be spoilers. But Sky bet a top price for all 4 of our relegated teams in the 124s. Okay. So, if you're going to have a bet off the back of those, they're the place to go. I'll go through them now, because I think there's only one that I would probably, it's funny this, because the bottom end of League 1, as you very wisely said to me yesterday, wise man you are.
Oh, nice.
So the bottom end of League 1 is probably the most predictable part of the EFL, apart from the top end of the Championship. And I'd probably say the bottom end of the Championship as well. And that is true, where it's pretty rare that you get a really
predicted
unexpected...
Luton to go down last season, did he?
Yeah, I did in January. In our
in January, right, okay.
Yeah, when they were
in the middle of the season.
When they were 20-1.
Right.
Yeah, but then, so Bristol Rovers last season were a relative surprise, and they'd have been a single figure price going into the season. So there's an element where you're like, well, maybe this is where you just kind of bet the shorties. But AFC Wimbledon are even money right now for relegation, and even though I think they're going to really struggle, I would really struggle to bet them at that price without seeing them play, at least, especially because last season they were so good defensively, and I have my doubts as to whether being a really good defensive League 2 side can translate into being a really good defensive League 1 side. I think they'll get possibly found out against better attacking forces. But either way, you'd want to see it first. Northampton at 11-8, again, doesn't appeal at all. Kevin Nolan has come out and said that they're struggling to get players in, but he wants to bring loads in. So there's a chance we have no idea who their starting 5-6 players are going to be come the end of August. Exeter at 7-4, a team that we both think are going to struggle, that we had bottom of our 1-24s, but who under Gary Caldwell have successfully stayed up a couple of seasons and done so relatively comfortably. So again, I'd need to see them being as poor as we worry they're going to be before parting with my money at 7-4 to do so. The one I'm interested in, and they have annoyingly kind of been backed over the last week or so, but I think Peterborough at 7-2 are the ones for me where I'd happily get involved at that price. They're They were a poor side last season. They obviously got the results later on in the campaign in order to ease away from being in a relegation battle, but they've lost loads of key players off the back of that. Eden who wasn't a massive player for them, but Mothersill down the left-hand side has moved on. Fernandez, the defender's gone as well. They've lost multiple players. Kwame Poku's gone to QPR. And it doesn't look to me like they've replaced them with like signings that we can be confident will replicate that kind of performance level. And Darren Ferguson, he's not necessarily a manager that I think is suited to taking charge of a team that might be one of the poorest teams in the league. They were the worst team in the league on XG ratio in the back end of last season from February onwards. And again, I think if you were to basically take Peterborough's squad and their numbers and call them Exeter, like what price are they going to be? It's just this idea that like, well, they were a championship side recently. They've got Darren McAntony in charge, who has steered them to some like huge successes in the past. They were playoff semi-finalists a couple of seasons ago. Like last year was probably just a bit of a blip. I'm not sure it was a blip. I think if you look for it, you can see clear reasons why the team has got way worse. And I think they might struggle. So at 7-2, they're the ones I'd take out of it.
Yeah, and just at a longer price, you mentioned Bristol Rovers last season. No one at this point last season was flagging Bristol Rovers for relegation. So I suppose the fact that there's 4 spots is brutal. Like it obviously it gives you less protection for having a surprisingly bad season, as Bristol Rovers found out. Even with a month or 3 left, it's still like, God, Bristol Rovers are terrible this season, aren't they? But they should probably still be fine. All it took was for Burton to pick up and Bristol Rovers to not improve, and they're done. So for me, in that sort of mould, if you like, or trying to recreate that, I'd be looking at Rotherham, who are 5-1 for relegation at the moment. Maybe similar to what you just said about Peterborough. I think the perception of Rotherham is, well, we've seen them in the Championship at various intervals over the last 6-7 years. Yes, last season in League One didn't go very well. They just sort of meekly finished mid-table. The Steve Evans appointment went really, really poorly, but they'll probably be fine. They're Rotherham. I'm a bit concerned about what is left behind after that poorer season. I don't think it's the sort of wreckage that's easy for someone just to come in, wipe the slate clean and go again. They've got Matt Hamshaw in charge, boyhood fan of the club, and certainly when it comes to fan buy-in, like it's very strong and it's hard not to get a bit swept up in that. But I'm pretty confident this squad is quite poor, and it doesn't look to me like they've got great ability to sign quality this summer based on the signings that they have made. In their last friendly, and I'm kind of going against my own golden rule of not reading into preseason friendly results. But I don't even know what the result is. So, that sort of supports my theory. It's not the results. Here are Hamshaw's quotes from their last game before the first of the season. Not good enough. I can't come out and say anything after that. I've said all along, I can't guarantee results, but I can guarantee a work ethic and a camaraderie. I couldn't guarantee those things today. So he says, I can guarantee a work ethic and a camaraderie. I couldn't guarantee those things today. We were miles away from what I wanted. We looked soft, we looked lackadaisical, and we looked like we weren't up for the fight. That's as far away from a Rotherham United performance as you're going to get. And I've just spoken to the players in the dressing room about it. So yeah, Matt Hamshaw might be able to get into them and make the most of that performance coming in a friendly and make sure they don't replicate that. Or there could be a factor of this group of players are a bad blend and they don't work that well together, and on a sort of team personality level, maybe it's not there, and maybe Matt Hamshaw won't be able to dredge that out of them. We don't really know much about Hamshaw as a manager of this point, but I think the fact that he's a boyhood fan makes everyone think like, well, they'll definitely work hard for him. Well, actually, player like personality, club personality, team personality can be quite volatile and maybe not quite as easy as to predict as that. So just with that extra relegation spot, there's not that much room for error for a club, even of Rotherham size, as Bristol Rovers found out last season. So the 5-1 appeals to me. Same price for Cheltenham relegation in League Two, 5-1. At the time of recording, and I'm pretty low on Cheltenham. I was last season, and obviously they didn't actually get that close to being relegated. but somehow in a way that made me still quite confident that they might be a poor team again this season. They're clearly struggling budget-wise, and they are currently keeping hold of some of their star players like Archer and Thomas and Jude Boyd, but I don't know how much they'll be able to hold on to those guys, and if they do sell them, it'd be difficult to find quality like them, which they did very well this time last season. So I really think that the squad is quite poor. I don't think that Mike Flynn, in terms of League Two managers, is a huge standout reason to like really get behind Cheltenham personally. And it's a club that's just been sliding for me for quite a while. So the 5-1 Cheltenham relegation appeals in League Two. What about you in League Two?
Yeah, a couple of kind of big price darts here, because League Two, unlike the Championship and League One, I think often throws up massive surprises, as was the case with Carlisle last season, who Goffey put up on TLS at 33-1 in the summer.
There's been a double price relegation in League Two in all but one of the last 10 or 11 seasons.
There you go. So I've got one single digit and one double digit. Shrewsbury Town, 17-2. We've seen teams get relegated out of the Football League, out of the EFL, off the back of a relegation from League One. Shrews were really poor last season. As I mentioned in the 124s, I really worry about the squad building. I love their manager, Michael Appleton. I think in the right environment, he is very, very good, but this doesn't really feel like the right environment to me. Defenders who can't really play out from the back. Not many talented young players, and kind of I think his work with young players is what normally sets him apart, or has done in the past at both Lincoln and Oxford. Not so much recently, and I given the off-field worries there with the takeover that didn't happen and the general kind of fan sentiment, I really worry that if things don't start well, then it won't be Appy, he'll be there anymore, it'll be someone else. And as we saw with Carlisle last season, chopping and changing managers when things don't start well isn't necessarily the way to go. So I'm worried about them, and I think at 17-2, they are priced up as if relegation isn't really a concern when I think it is. And Swindon Town, Oxford's great friends, my team. They're 14-1 for relegation. And I completely understand it. A lot of people whose views I respect very much, including yourself, really fancy them for next season. But I just think that you've got a team who, like, over quite a long period of time were really poor in League Two, who made a managerial change, bringing Ian Holloway, which seemed to kind of fix the issue from a short-term perspective. But we've seen this with Ollie in the past. Like, I know that obviously what happened at Grimsby was in part because of the off-field issues that happened there. But I can't really think of a time recently where Ian Holloway has like seen a job through. I think his personality and his character might give everyone a bit of a lift, but it tends to kind of spiral and end in tears. There are still, the better results at the back end of last season, and the optimism, I guess, paper over the cracks around the Clem Morphuni ownership, where when Holloway was appointed, there were massive concerns and like calls for him to sell. I think that kind of undercurrent of worry is maybe more relevant than some good results at the back end of last season. The underlying numbers at the back end of last season were fine. They were mid-table. They weren't amazing. So 14-1 about a team that were like in a bit of trouble months ago just seems way too reactive to what is a very short, kind of small sample size of better performances and results. And again, I looked at the squads, and I'm still not seeing huge quality there for League Two level. So, this will go down terribly with Swindon fans, of course. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they continue where they went on from last season and are good. But from a price perspective, 14-1 about a team that were kind of seen as a basket case 4 or 5 months ago. I'm not sure enough has changed to justify that. Okay, let's look at some top goal scorer markets. Now, George mentioned the Long Shot earlier. That's our subscription betting newsletter on Substack. And my role on there between me, George, and Nick Goff is the goal scorer merchant. So I'm putting together a big piece with my top goal scorer selections, which will go out in the next week or two on the Long Shot. That means that the stage is set for George Elek on this preview show to talk us through how he sees the League One, League Two top goal scorer markets as priced up by Sky Bet. Now, George, for those who haven't watched this show before, has a great personality when it comes to goal scorer bets, quite regularly picking players that he's never seen play before to win the Golden Boot. I haven't done it this year. And generally has had a bit of bad luck, shall we say, in this market in the past. But, at big prices, you just need one to land and then you look like a genius. Yeah, who was it that texted you saying, I think we need to put back Sammy Smodic's 150 to 1 for...
I don't know. I've wiped my phone. No evidence of anything like that.
So, 3 in League One. I think that Alfie May is a honking favourite at 9 to 2. Obviously he wouldn't be surprised if he won, but he has joined a side that have about 17 strikers. And that's always a bit of a red flag for me in this, where, say... Reece Healy gets going early on in the season when he's back from injury, if he ever gets back from injury, or any one of their strikers,
or Joe Taylor, or Dion Charles,
exactly,
or yeah.
Then suddenly, at no fault of his own, Alfie May is just sitting on the bench. Like you want to pick players who are going to play. I think there's no doubt in my mind, even though there's a chance he might be leaving, that Youssef Salek should be favourite for this market. He's 10 to 1, which is best price anywhere at time of recording. A quarter of the 4 each way terms. He scored 8 goals at the back end of last season. He came in from Sweden, where his goal record was very good. He looks like just a proper penalty box striker who's good with his feet, a real aerial threat as well. He's playing for a really poor side last season in Cardiff with like bad chance creation, and he still managed to score 8 goals.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Even if you factor in, say, even like a 50% chance that he's going to leave, which I don't think is correct, then you're still basically getting 5 to 1. Because if you get even money he leaves, you're getting 5 to 1 about him being top goal scorer to make it value. And I think you can make a case for that. Like they don't have a very deep squad. They haven't brought in any new players. And crucially, in Brian Barry Murphy, they have an insanely attacking manager who I think even if things go badly at Cardiff this season, it won't be because of a lack of goals or attacking thrust. It'll be the defensive side of things. So I think Salek is I don't normally like putting up favourites or short price ones in this market, but he's one where if you're willing to accept there's a chance that this is a loser by the end of August because he leaves, I think the 10 to 1 is still good enough to do so. Sam Nombe next. I totally take on board your worries about Matt Hamshaw and Rotherham, but in case it is okay, he scored 14 goals last season in a really poor season for them. He scored 15 for Exeter back in 22-23.
Yeah.
He's someone who gets into good positions. He's a decent finisher, and I think one day we'll just win one of these, basically, when he's playing for a good side that create chances. And if it does go well with Rotherham and Hampshire, we already know from last season that it's going to be attacking football that will do it. And finally, Bim Peppel is 50 to 1, which is a huge price. Like, Argyle have just parted company with quite a lot of money to sign him. He has been prolific-ish at Southend on loan, and then last season at Chesterfield, he scored 6 goals in his loan spell there. All 6 goals came inside the 6-yard box. So, and you've got a Tom Cleverley, who's a manager that managed to get Vakun Bio 10 championship goals last season. So, in my mind, Peppel is going to play a lot of minutes. If Argyle are a functioning side, even though he may not be the best finisher necessarily, I think he'll get a lot of chances. And at 50 to 1, when you consider the starting strikers for teams expected to be at the top end in this market are generally 25 to 1 or shorter, I don't really see why. It's only because of like a lack of data, I guess, or because he's young, that he's been priced up like that. Then one that I really like in League 2 is Real Satiriou, who's 40 to 1. And I can't see at all why that should be the case. Like, he's only 24 years old, and to have scored 9 goals from not many minutes in 21-22 at League 2 level with Orient, 9 goals again in 22-23 for Orient, 11 goals the season after that in 23-24 in League 1. Like, posting those kind of numbers in your early 20s is a good sign. And he's someone that we know playing in he hasn't played for many good teams, and last season for Rovers only scored 6. But under Darryl Clark, playing in a better side, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's one that finally kind of puts it all together and posts a decent number. So Satiriou in League 2 is my only selection, and then Salek 10 to 1, Nombe 25 to 1, and Peppel 50 to 1, my 3 in League 1.
Now, before we get into some picks for opening weekend, we've been on at Sky Bet for some request to bets. George, sort of cross-division, multis, boosted, and will be available on the Sky Bet site by the time this show goes out. We've both got a 5-fold to put up. Who's in yours?
I've got 2 teams finishing the top 6 in League 1. Stockport County being one of them for reasons already mentioned. Blackpool, the other one, have done some really eye-catching business over the course of the summer. Fraser Horsfall being one. George Honeyman bringing in kind of good League 1 players. And under Steve Bruce last season, they were really impressive for the second half of the campaign. I think the ambition there this season is to go up, and I think they're overlooked in the market. I think 4 to 1 now they are to finish in the top 6. And 2 sides relegated. As I mentioned, Wimbledon and Northampton's price didn't really appeal that much from a singles perspective, but Wimbledon aside coming up from League Two through the playoffs, who I think might be caught out in terms of their good defensive record, and certainly their lack of goals last season could be an issue stepping up. And Northampton, whose squad at the moment just looks decimated, and they need loads of new players. And then in League Two, Walsall, as I mentioned, 13-8, again probably too skinny for me to get involved as a single, but again, overlooked. I still maintain that they were one of the best, if not the best team in League Two last season, who came in for some rotten luck in the second half of the campaign. We saw the green shoots back in the two-legged win over Chesterfield. They've added some really impressive players, having lost a couple too, and I am still confident that Matt Sadler's are going to be a force this season. So Stockport and Blackpool to finish top 6 in League 1. Northampton, Wimbledon relegated in League 1. Walsall top 7, boosted from 66-1 out to 80-1 with Sky Bet.
And for me, I've got Luton to finish in the top 2 as my first leg of the fivefold. This just gives a little bit of insurance in case Stockport or Huddersfield, one of those teams, are absolutely excellent, but we both have Luton as the likely title winners in League 1. So Luton top 2, Exeter relegation in League 1 as well. It's a brutal league with 4 relegation places, and I think that although Exeter have stayed up with relative comfort in the last few years, the ways in which they've done so make me concerned that they can get on really long runs of poor form, and I think if they do, they might struggle this time to have the quality in their squad to get out of it. In League 2, Chesterfield to finish in the top 3 is my third leg. As discussed, I think Chesterfield the likely title winners in my eyes, and so top 3 feels right to me. Barnet top 7 is the fourth selection in the fivefold, and finally Newport relegation. They are favourites for relegation in League 2. I think that's justified. I think they're going to find it really difficult this season. So the fivefold: Luton top 2, Exeter relegation, Chesterfield top 3, Barnet top 7, and Newport relegation. That's been boosted to 251 with Sky Bet. Okay, now we really are getting excited about the fact that the season is just days away. We've always enjoyed opening weekend. From a betting perspective, when you do as much pre-season research as we do, you always end up with some stances. Quite often the opening weekend prices provide some opportunity.
Yeah, exactly, because we haven't seen these teams yet, and the perception and our ideas of what's going to happen can often be very different, and that's why I love opening weekend, because there's no data to go off. It's just us versus them, basically. My best bet of the weekend is Walsall to beat Swindon. I've spoken about both of these teams already. I think Walsall were way better than Swindon for all of last season. Even in the second half of the season, when Walsall won't pick up as many points as Swindon, I'd have thought they'd go off massive favourites against them, given the prices they were going off. I think over the course of last summer, Matt Sadler built an incredibly strong team, and I see no reason why over the course of this summer he wouldn't have done the same thing. And I just need to see Swindon before I'm going to buy into maybe the hype. Walsall are the home team for this game, and at 23-20, that kind of suggests that if these two were to meet at a neutral venue, there wouldn't be much between them. And I'm just not having that until we see evidence that Swindon are deserving of that kind of stature. I'm getting on board with Walsall. So, as I've said so many times, Walsall's underlying numbers, and having watched so many of their games at the back end of last season, like between both boxes, they were still so dominant. They were just unable to finish their dinner, and they kept conceding worldies. And that isn't, in my mind, a cause for massive concern and for changing things. And if they continue that, and they continue to dominate between both boxes, they're going to be a good team again. And I'm willing to find out at 23-20 on Saturday.
Bit of a summer off, a bit of a squad refresh. You reckon they'll be back in business and confident once again? Yeah, I'm going with Wigan as my nap. They're at home to Northampton, 11-10 at the time of recording with Sky Bet. I think anything odds against really appeals to me here. And this is partly an anti-Northampton angle, really. I think that they are still in a big squad rebuild. They obviously got quite a lot of bodies in early. It seems like Kevin Nolan has taken a look at those that have come in the building and gone, no, we still need quite a lot more, which is a bit of a concern. They've got trouble at the top of the pitch at the moment. They've had a fairly poor pre-season, and they're away at a Wigan side who I think we'll be going for a big positive start at home under Ryan Lowe. It's a place that needs a bit of energy to be generated, and I think that Lowe did a pretty good job towards the end of last season to get fans on board. Fair amount of business this summer, and in particular the sort of business that fans love: strikers, Paul
A load of
Mullin,
them.
Christian Sadie, Dara Costello should have a bit more about them at the top of the pitch, and that's what they need. So Wigan to beat Cobblers 11-10 is my best bet of opening weekend.
Yeah, a couple more for me. My next best, Friday night football.
Here we go.
Under the lights, the first game of the EFL season. And we had a bit of fun last season with winter nil winter. And I don't think I can say it's winter in July. But I do think that Luton to winter nil is one of those games that really could fall into the category where this is a bit missed. They're 6-4 to winter nil. Now, the reason why we had a lot of fun with winter nil last season, especially in the first half of the campaign, was because there seemed to be, for whatever reason, a bigger disparity between the best teams in the leagues last season and the worst. And the best teams in the league last season, Leeds, Burnley in the Championship, and Birmingham in League One, was based on having just ridiculously good defences. Like in Leeds' position, it was the fact that they basically didn't concede any chances. In Burnley's position, it was the fact that James Trafford is probably going to be Man City and England's number one this year, and he was playing in the Championship last season. With League One and Birmingham, they were just so dominant and just dominated the ball to such a ridiculous degree that teams couldn't get near them. And that meant that the winter nil price early on in the campaign was never really accurate. I think that could be the case, possibly. If there's going to be a team that's going to be the case with this season, it's going to be Luton. And if there's going to be a team in League One who might not be anywhere near it from an attacking perspective this season, especially having lost their key player, the
Josh the Noif.
Having lost Josh the Noif, their kind of key attacking player on the right hand side, it could be Wimbledon who could struggle. Like they struggled for goals last season, and Luton have a ridiculous array of centre backs, whether it's Christ Makosa or Mark McGuinness. Like they've got about 8 of them. So this is one of those where if I'm right, and if Luton are, if the market's right, and Luton are comfortably the best team in the league, and Dons are comfortably the worst, I can't see this being 6-4 to winter nil. We know when the data kind of unravels as the season goes on, but because it's the first game of the season, we might be getting a bigger price than we thought. And that is, one way to get involved with the Friday night game to kick off the season. Yeah, and then a game, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday between Cardiff and Peterborough. And I am looking here at both teams to score in both halves, which is 12-1. Top price in the market with Sky Bet. I was a bit annoyed because I had this marked down for goals early on. It's kind of been found in like the over 2.5, over 3.5 markets. And that's because Peterborough United under Darren Ferguson, like goals are just attracted to him in the way that they play. Like they're the team that see the most like ridiculously high scoring games. But then we've got Cardiff City and we've got Brian Barry Murphy's first game in charge. And his Rochdale games when he was in charge were ridiculously attacking. Like the ideology and the way that he plays was so front footed. I can't see why that would have changed at Man City. Opening game, I think both teams will be absolutely throwing everything at this. And for a big, I wouldn't put you off backing the kind of shorter price stuff around the BTTS and the rest of it. But just as a fun kind of bigger price one on opening day on the Saturday, 12-1 about both teams scoring both halves, I think could be quite a fun way to get involved.
Yeah, and I've just got one other bet on opening day, and it's a 5-fold ACCA. I've got Wigan in there, who were my nap, as discussed, at home to Cobblers. I've also got Port Vale away at Rotherham, who are 2.8 as we record. And this is one where I'd be certainly keeping a close eye on the ACCA freeze button. Like at that price, if Vale go ahead at Rotherham, then that would probably be the one that I would look to lock in pretty quickly, if so. And that's because I think Vale will start the season pretty well. It's a team that just won promotion, finished the season very strongly, similar group of players, same manager. No real reason why they would suddenly be a little incoherent, a little unsure of themselves as a unit. Whereas, as discussed, Rotherham, their hosts, I think there is a chance that they might be a bit undercooked to start the season. So a fast start here from Vale at a good price goes into my 5-fold. Donny against Exeter. Doncaster, the home side of my pick here. Another team coming up from League Two. Another team that I expect to be hitting the ground running. Best team in League Two last season, and they tend to go fairly well upper level. They did their business early, so they've been in the building a long time, and I think that they should instantly look like a better side than Exeter, who I predict to struggle this season in League Two, in League One rather. And then in League Two, I've got Salford at home to Crewe, 1.83 as we record. I think that Salford will be a lot stronger than Crewe this season. I think they've got a lot of really impressive individuals, and I expect them to be too good for a Crewe side that have a lot of key players injured already. And then Chesterfield, my pick for the League Two title. They're at home to Barrow, a short price, but they round out the ACCA. I think that they will start and be purring instantly, this Chesterfield side after Paul Cook. I think they're going to hit the ground running really, really well this season. And Barrow under Andy Wing, one of the highest turnovers of any squad in the country. So I think might take a little bit of time to get to grips with things. So it's just over 30 to 1 with Sky Bet. All the prices of our picks are subject to change between recording and publishing this episode, but they are correct as of the time that we record this. Betting is obviously for over 18s only, and we ask that anyone listening and thinking of placing a bet this weekend or anytime to be gamble aware and head to gambleaware.org to brush up on the risks that come with betting. But there's a League One and League Two betting preview in the can. We're building momentum ahead of the start of the season. We hope you're enjoying all of our pre-season content, with thanks to Sky Bet for sponsoring the NTT20 betting show. We'll be back again very shortly with some Championship 1 to 24s. Thanks for listening and go well.